Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to as usual, impromptu video. It's a lovely Sunday afternoon, 2nd of March 2025, and I'm just stood under the underpass in Bournemouth. I've just been walking along the upper gardens, and of course, when you do, you eventually reach this open air art exhibitions, no other way of putting it really, which I believe has been created by local artists and put on display here for all to see. Some quite interesting pieces. I've not gone around the other side of them because I'm not really, the purpose of this video isn't to highlight artworks, but while I was here I thought I'd start the video here. Anyway, and to the right there are some tennis courts, indoor one there, and to the right of that again some outdoor tennis courts. But anyway, I hope you're all doing well. I hope everybody's doing fine. I'm doing all right, thank you very much. I hope everyone got through their weekends in one piece and are ready to attack the week. I feel I am as well. Of course that can change, but for the moment I'll say, yeah, I'm in quite a good spot, if I'm totally honest, which does make a lovely, refreshing change, because you can get stuck in your own head too much at times, worrying about things, thinking way too much about stuff that's way out of your control anyway. And so I've spent the last couple of days kind of, yes, thinking a little bit, but more in a positive sort of mindset, and talking to a couple of people about it as well. Friends, that is, about how, control the controllables is an old saying, I know, and it's easier said than done. But try and stay positive for yourself, and try and influence the little bits that that are directly related to your own life, as opposed to trying to, let's say, change things, for want of a better phrase. That's not really what I want to say, that are sort of beyond my life and beyond my immediate kind of aura, if you like, right? I think you know what I'm trying to say. So it's basically more keeping it in the day, keeping it more in myself, and working things out from there. That's not to say I'm gonna shut up about things and highlight stuff that I feel people maybe aren't noticing or whatever, or are just whistling past because it's more convenient to do so, and use everyday life as an excuse not to do it, and use busyness as an excuse not to pay attention to stuff. I'll still do that, but I certainly ain't letting it affect me if I get weird responses, or aggressive responses, or responses of mockery, which often happens, born out of lack of knowledge, of course, and fear, because it's all fear-based at the end of the day, isn't it? Let's have it right. But anyway, now that I've waffled on, I'm going to take a left and I'm going to walk down this path. So we're in Bourne Valley, if you like, walking towards the upper gardens. So I thought it was in the upper gardens there, but it's sort of walking towards the upper gardens. Interesting little fact, actually, or interesting little tidbit. The word valley in German means Tal, T-H-A-L. So anytime you see a name with that on the end of it, like Blumenthal or something like that, Rosenthal, it's all to do with flowers in valleys. And so the name is directly spawned from probably an area that somebody comes from, or a description of a region that someone comes from or originates from. So Tal, and the word dollar, the US currency, stems from the German word Thaler, which means currency of the valley. And it actually is quite interesting, because if you look at the percentage split in the US of origins, or originality, sort of heritage, UK, Irish, Italian, whatever, Germany makes up of the second largest contingency of US citizens, or let's say that have their heritage in Germany, right after English. So You've got about 60 million. This is according to the official stats, of course, I know. But as we're living in a world of officialdom, let's go with what they tell us. What we do with that knowledge then is a different thing, obviously. But yeah, according to those stats, over 60 million US citizens have their origins in some way, shape or form with England. And second would be on that list Germany. I can't remember now the amount, but it's also a fair proportion, obviously. And then you have Italy, Ireland is up there, etc. So we're talking about the so-called, when you want to follow the history books, then your so-called settler nations. So the people who came over to America on wooden boats with no provisions, nothing, maybe a compass at best, which only works on the flat earth, by the way, and that would be that. And then off you scooted across an Atlantic, which it's a rather large body of water, doesn't curve, by the way, to then end up on the American coast. No harbours, no opportunity to moor your boats, no, not even knowing what the American landscape is like because you've never been there, because you're the first ones, you are the founding fathers, as the word would suggest, etc, etc, etc. And then of course the whole story takes on even more nonsensical dimensions. But yeah, gosh, it's got a little bit nippy, I have to say. As soon as that sun goes out of view and the shade sort of kicks in, it starts getting rather cold. So we're not quite there with the spring yet. So while we're walking, first of all, I'd like to sort of just mention that we had a good Flat Earth social last week. Sean Hibbler, filmmaker, amongst other things, graced us with his presence. He did a Zoom call and, you know, gave a bit of a self-description of his background and the inspirations behind his various different films, the documentary style films that he's done, and also the fact that his next project will be leaning towards geoengineering, or colloquially what we like to call chemtrails. So all the stuff that they spray in the sky that for some reason people still deny and tell me are simple condensation or condensed trails, contrails, which they're not, because contrails disappear behind the plane after a short period. They don't hang in the air for half an hour and then widen out and then turn the sky grey, right? There's a huge difference. The denial at times is they're frustrating isn't the word. It's just laughable, basically. You know, the unwillingness to see it. And, you know, and here's the thing. It's not about me thinking I can change the world by reminding people, and I'm not the only one doing this. There are lots and lots of people doing this, you know. If I go on my Instagram account, for example, the amount of videos that come my way, little clips and stuff, of areas that are being sprayed left, right and centre from all around the world, you know, who I'm friends with on there and stuff, and we stay in touch and people share their footage, you know, from literally everywhere. No corner of this earth has been left untouched by our liquid engineers, I almost said, to quote a Gary Newman lyric. So yeah, that's what he's got to be looking to do, is do a movie, film, documentary, whatever, in that vein, to look at the chemtrailing that's going on. It's been going on for years and years, but it's got really bad now. It's got so bad, in fact, that the BBC on their weather forecast segment on the news a few weeks ago had to explain to the public that there's nothing unusual about all those lines in the sky, and it's to do with temperature, and in certain circumstances that's what you see, and blah de blah de blah. Well, they had to react because obviously the powers that are, who have their feelers out by way of listening to what people are doing online, because that's what online is all about. It's a huge monitoring mechanism. You know, they are well aware that the vibe within certain communities is focusing more and more on what's going on above their heads. You know, why are people feeling ill all the time? you know, feeling low, feeling depressed, feeling tired, lethargic, sluggish, you know, lacking in drive and motivation. And that's just for starters. So, you know, that's not just people getting a bit older or whatever like me. I'm turning 52 in a couple of days' time, right? But trust me, on a good day, I feel as young as I ever felt. Ever. But those good days are fewer and further between, right? And again, you know, and I'm just literally just having a normal conversation about this. This has nothing to do with tinfoil hat wearing, you know, conspiracy theorists sat in basements with nothing better to do. It's for want of a better phrase, it's citizens journalism. It's bringing to people who might not want to see it or haven't got the time or for whatever reason. And I'm just saying, look, this is what we're seeing here. What do you make of that? Does that ring true to you? Does that fit? Do your observations fit or jive with what you're told, what you've read, what you've learned? You know, if the answer to that is no, then it's worth questioning deeper and digging a bit deeper. Right? That's with anything. Anyway, I digress. So Sean Hibbler did his little chat with us, and then we ended up with some really, really good conversations, which are the parts of that meetup that I really love, are when we have the you know, the post presentation sort of chats amongst each other, because, you know, the group as a whole who meet up there, it's like any group, you always find people who you gravitate to a little bit more, you know, and you find yourself in conversations following on from the last one. You only see each other once a month, unless you're in touch in between, which I am with one or two, because we tend to meet up and have a look at some of the beautiful old constructions that are nearby where we live, you know. But then, of course, you've got a lot to talk about in those monthly sessions, you know what I mean? Including current affairs and whatever, you know, is on the agenda of the mainstream media, you know, and all that sort of stuff. So the meeting has, I did a video about this a few months ago, you know, the meetups for that sort of reason have a lot of value for me, you know, very cathartic, very helpful, good for my mental health, no doubt about that, to be meeting up with like-minded people. And when I say like-minded people, I'm talking about people who you can talk to and talk with without fear of being judged, without fear of being mocked, without any of that, without having to have your guard up, right? Because it saps you of your energy having to have your guard up all the time, watch what you say, who you say it to, in what tone you say it, blah, 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 right? It's a strenuous undertaking. Anyway, talking about strenuous undertakings, look at that there. Let's just knock up a tower made of bricks, shall we? While our public and populations are plucking potatoes out of fields, and we drive around in horse and carts, those of us who can afford a horse. Lovely little building, that. I don't know what you would be necessarily guarding if you got guard duty on the top of that. But yeah, as usual, comprised of bricks. Yeah, astounding. Lovely bit of architecture, that. Anyway, I digress. See, that's what I do every day, you know, when I'm walking. Well, I say every day, when I do go out and walk short distances, I can't walk too far. Like today's a bit of a test for me, so I'm taking it a bit slow. I always stop and look at things, because I'm always noticing something else, or noticing yet more of what I've noticed with previous buildings, for example, or whatever. You know, it's just fascinating. There's so much of, I call it not old world constructions, I would call it more pre-reset constructions, because I think it's fair to say that we had some form of reset that happened round about the 1800s. and that's something that I'll be talking about in more detail the next Flat Earth Social, or the one in April. Anyway, right, so getting back to what I was talking about, I'll get to that again a bit later in this video, but getting back to what I was talking about. So the last social was great. It was nice to reconvene and compare notes and talk about a lot of stuff, including current affairs and stuff like that. And it's quite ironic because one of the topics we were talking about were, you know, things like fake wars and, you know, having things depicted in the media that aren't as they really are, you know, perception and reality, and the difference between the two. And one of the things that came up in that conversation was Ukraine, and I talked a little bit about, you know, but in order to compare and to, you know, to draw from some experience of a similar situation that I was in many years ago, I talked a bit about my time when I was in the Republic of Georgia back in 2008, and we were forced to leave the country because the Russians allegedly had attacked and all the rest of it, right? And it was put out all over the news. You'd have thought the whole country was in flames, you know. And I was saying to a couple of people that actually, you know, on reflection, I didn't see any fighting at all. I didn't see any military hardware being moved about. You know, it's only a small country, and you know the whole western coast of Georgia borders on the Black Sea, so that would be an access point for any naval attacks. Would be across the Black Sea to the Georgian port towns of, say, Poti, for example, or Kutaisi, for example. Koboleti is another one. But no, because we had to drive along that coastal road to get to Turkey to get a visa to get over the border to be safe, in inverted commas, because Turkey is a NATO country. And of course, along that coastal road, expecting to see sort of Russian Navy vessels in the distance approaching the Georgian coastline. No, we saw nothing. No jets overhead. I mean, this country was supposed to be in a full-blown war at that time. You know, allegedly Russian tanks had surrounded Tbilisi, the capital, and besieged it. And the West were sending their politicians on special flights. You know, you had the French president and the British Prime Minister and all the rest of it. And they were all meeting up, and foreign ministers were meeting up, and they were kicking up a huge hoo-ha about it and making it oh so dramatic. When in actual fact, on the ground, when you were there was jack going on. Right? You can create a lot through media hype, because so many people are fixated on it. That's their go-to. And when people say to me, well, I don't have a TV at home, yeah, but you have a bloody gadget in your pocket, though. You take your TV with you nowadays. You don't have to go home and switch it on when you're boiling a kettle. Anyway, I digress. So I was going off on a tangent yet again. But the Zelensky thing was quite interesting because, of course, I'm sure some of you are aware of the recent bit of theatre that was served to us, where you're seeing Zelensky in his usual scout uniform, sat there in front of the world's press with chief puppet Trump and his vice second in command, 2IC puppet Vance, or whatever his name is. I don't even know these guys' names anymore, but I think so. I remember a DJ called Tommy Vance. Anyway, and those three were sat there having a pretend argument and a pretend row, as you would do in front of the press, of course. If it was really serious and really like that, you'd be doing all of that chit-chat behind closed doors. I don't know if you're noticing the shrubbery, I nearly said, to my left there. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that interesting? Look at that. Walking past it, rambling on, and not noticing my surroundings. Beautiful. Yeah, and there they were, sat in a room in front of the world's press, and basically Zelensky was being told off by the other two planks, and it was just simply cringeworthy. I saw it because it came up on my feed. This is the thing, this is what I'm saying, you don't have to turn the telly on anymore. All you have to do is go onto your account or whatever, go onto YouTube or go onto Instagram, or depends what your sort of choice of social media activity is, and there you have it coming up. And yeah, so I did have a little look just to see how they framed it all and how they kind of delivered it all and presented it to us, and it's absolutely dreadful. I mean, it's not even good acting. It really isn't. It's so obvious. You know, they used to have good people doing this deceiving, but now even the deceivers are kind of losing their touch a little bit. They're getting a bit sloppy because they know they can. Because it's the thing, right? The quality of deceit doesn't have to be as high as it used to be because the levels of dumbness have increased amongst the population. And so you're having a shift that's not noticeable. You don't have to give much more effort anymore because people just watch it and take it, and that's it. Nobody lifts an eyebrow, raises an eyebrow, gives it a second thought. Oh, it's just the way it is, isn't it? And cracks on with their life. Easy pickings. So easy. But yeah, and it was funny because I also saw, just have a quick look at the house. I don't like to point the camera into someone's face when they're jogging towards me. It's not fair. But these are the sort of buildings you see along this pathway, by the way. Yeah, so whilst looking at that, I went onto my Instagram account because I wanted to check something, and I saw a clip there from Candace Owens, who seems to be a bit of a big hitter online nowadays. Go and check out her background. Not that her background is true, by the way, because anyone's back profile can be manipulated. People should know that as well. But anyway, when you go and see what she, for example, talks about, and everybody's praising her for being a critical thinker and someone who's free of the puppeteers and all that, well, what, you've got to be kidding me. And the reason why I know she is handled is because of the things she says. And in this whole Zelensky thing, she was pointing a finger at Zelensky about how he's a puppet, how he's an actor, and giving us the rundown on his personal resume. And I'm thinking, you should be doing the same for the other two there in that room too, because they are all puppets. Just because the other guys are American and happen to be your president doesn't make them less of a puppet as the other guy. You know what I mean? It's like, well, why are you thinking like that? You're not really then a true research analyst that has objectivity at the base of it all and all the rest of it. Absolutely not. It's so, well, it's handled. Basically, it's agenda driven. And that's what's going on a lot online at the moment. You've got a lot of so-called podcasts and content creators and stuff who are acting in the name of truth-seeking, whatever that means. But of course, they're being very selective with their information too. So what they do is they draw some people in. The people who they draw in, think they found someone who's talking their truth, if you like. But of course, they're still pushing other nonsense. Right? We have that in our flat earth community. Exactly the same. I'm not going to go into that now, but those who know. But it's the same thing. You have people within your community, you think you're on, you're all on the same level, if you like, and then you realise when you get into a bit sort of deeper discussions or whatever, oh no, he does believe in politics, or oh no, he's talking about writing to his local MP, oh dear, he doesn't understand how the system works, because at the end of the day, they are all irrelevant, these planks. They are just representing symbolically a system that's there to control us. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. They have no validity. They are literally, and I hate to quote David Icke because he's another one, right? But they are here today, gone tomorrow. Yeah, they know nothing. They have zero knowledge apart from what they've been told. They think they know through their universities, Oxford, Cambridge, or your Ivy League in America, and your Pendants in France, and similar ones in Germany and all these countries. Apart from the expertise they've gained, and they've been peer reviewed on by people who make sure they're in line, they have no idea about how the world is run or what goes on above their heads. They are tied to the financial system, which means they are controlled just like you or I. Anything above the financial system, then you're talking power. But anything below the financial system, the banks and all that sort of stuff, it's all totally irrelevant and totally and utterly controlled by the powers above. The powers who remain nameless because we don't know who they are. We're talking about people above Rothschilds, above Rockefellers, above JP Morgans, right? Anyway, so yeah, so of course it asks the question, just getting back to the whole Candace Owen thing, you know, you've got people within our community, I will touch on it actually, you've got people within our community, of course, the Flat Earth community that is, who, you know, have this drive to either get on people like her podcasts or are upset when they don't, you know, and see it almost as a badge of honour to get onto somebody's famous's podcast, regardless of whether they are for you, against you, or going to make a mockery of you or whatever. And in that vein, I totally disagree with the whole idea that any publicity is good publicity. I vehemently disagree with that. Absolutely not. I'm no longer willing to make myself look a fool just because it gets us onto some guy's platform, whether it's Roseanne Barr or whether it's Alex Jones, you know, on InfoWars, whether it's on Joe Rogan's platform, all these people who are all, every single one of them, handled to the hilt, right? What, to then be subject to insults and mockery and I'll be on the defensive all the time? And to be talking on their terms? No. Absolutely not. And so, you know, so the online stuff, whilst it can be handy and nifty in terms of, you know, staying in contact with each other and putting out some things like I do here, but I know I'm not going to reach millions of people, but I don't, that's never going to be the point anyway. It's never going to happen. But it's first of all, it's cathartic for me to talk about it and get it out. Secondly, there will be people who watch this who totally get what I'm saying. But I have no ambition to somehow become something by doing it. And that's the difference. For me, this just accompanies what I do anyway, which is talk about these topics quite a lot if I get the opportunity. I won't push it, but I will talk about it if it crops up and put my point of view over. But it's in everyday life where it counts. Your conversations with your peers, you know, family members included. At least the understanding, you know, that this is how I feel and this is why I feel like this and this is whatever. But, you know, this whole following and being followed malarkey online has led to the mess that all these communities are in at the moment. You know, the Flat Earth community, for example, and I'm not revealing any top secrets here because anybody can access it just by going into someone's live chat, hanging around for a few days, you'll soon know what's going on. It's in total disarray because people are attaching far too much, for some strange reason, attaching way too much meaning and value to something that was irrelevant in the first place. Excuse me. For example, the so-called final experiment. Excuse me. Which I've done a couple of videos on. Right? Even, you know, any conversations now about that are totally null and void in my opinion. It's irrelevant because you're not going to prove or disprove anything. All you're going to do is, yeah, keep going around in circles, maybe creating more beef. You might siphon out a few people who will reveal themselves to you differently than how you thought they were. So that could be maybe one positive as a filter mechanism, but that's about it. That's about it. The whole thing for me, right from the start, was a red herring. Right from the start. Because anybody who really knows their stuff and understands how the earth must be flat because it is measured that way for everything, you know, whether it's buildings, construction, whatever, or navigation, or aviation, anything like that, mapping, you name it, the earth must be flat. There must be a level plane that's your premise from which you work off to be able to do things like measure with angles, or whatever, right? So if you really truly have that knowledge and understand that, then you wouldn't have even given it a second thought about participating in something so strange as something even titled so strangely, like the final experiment. Something that wasn't final and wasn't even an experiment. But it was irrelevant from the start, because you don't need to take a trip to anywhere icy to talk about whether the earth is flat or not. There was no decisive outcome, ultimate answer from doing a trip like that, ever. But yet people did partake, and so that needs to be questioned. Absolutely, I'm on board with that. But no further than that. You know, and it smells to me of a few things. It smells to me of panic. Panic in the sense that people feel like the things that they've believed in for so many years are now going down the pan very quickly. This is within our community. There is a bit of dismay with people like myself, because I feel I'm being falsely represented to the outside world, who have even more reason to mock and point fingers at people who talk about flat earth, like myself, right? And confuse me with other muppets who are still very much active as I talk, and still have many, many followers, and still regurgitate the same crap and hardly get called out on it, you know. But anyway, that almost sounded like a bit of a rant, and it's not where I wanted to go with this. But yes, getting back to what I was saying before. So, switch of gears. So another thing that Mr. Hibbler talked about was his delving into the topic of what he calls old world stuff. A lot of people call it old world stuff. I've called it that as well. But if you think about it, it ain't really old world, because it's not that long ago, right? So even if you look at, I call it pre-reset constructions from now on in. If you look at, you know, the official history books, it will even tell you in there of something called the Victorian Restoration, which happened in the 1800s. Now, this is something I'm not going to talk too much about right now. I'm just sort of touching on it. But it's something I want to talk about in a bit more depth when I do my presentation at the Flat Earth Social on the 29th of April, Tuesday the 29th at 7 o'clock at the Bridge House Hotel. I will be focusing on that, because I think understanding this topic will help you gain more perspective when it comes to the overall world, you know, for taking a step back and just thinking about it, you know, from a way wider view. Yeah. So just imagine the things you'd be calling into question when you realise that really everything that we know today started in the 1800s. Everything. From, let's go through a couple just for fun, from postage to photography, to railway, to brick manufacturing, education system, although that wasn't even around quite yet, health, medication in general, communication systems, aviation, automobile industry, all that stuff that kind of needed the 1800s before they came to be at the very beginning of the 1900s, right? I personally think that these things were just rolled out at those given times, not invented. You know, that the storylines were given, they're just storylines. You know, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone and all that nonsense. And then they have an argument about, oh no, it was the Italian guy a year earlier. And they even put it in the Godfather film to hammer that point home. It's just adding more bullshit on top of bullshit. At the end of the day, it's neither nor. They rolled all this stuff out in lockstep with our populations. But what had to happen first was you had to centralise all that information, get your ducks in a row, and then have it distributed into the wider world, which you would then eventually turn into sections of land called countries. And that all happened in the 1800s by way of world fairs. pre-reset constructions that after those world fairs got demolished. And you could say this about many World's Fairs, not just the Crystal Palace World's Fair of 1851 in London, which happened to be the first one, and happened to also be in the Victorian era. Victoria, of course, means victory, right? And so why would you then demolish all of those? I mean, you're putting those World's Fairs to good use, aren't you, those buildings, by getting all your important elite people together under one roof, if you like, and then having them, like I said before, distribute that information to your various corners of the world. That was the very, very short format of what I'm going to be talking about. Yeah, so we don't go back thousands of years. We didn't sit around for thousands of years not knowing what to do with ourselves, and then one day someone wakes up and says, let's invent some steam power, or let's lay a couple of parallel tracks on the ground and see where we go with that idea. You know, these aren't things that we've been waiting thousands of years on. Definitely not. Anybody who thinks that, honestly, is totally deluded, or hasn't, or in fact, I'll give you benefit of the doubt, or just simply hasn't really paid proper attention to it. Like, admittedly, I hadn't done either. And I used to always love history, or what I thought was history, accurate history. Of course, it's not. It's a way of explaining things that fall in line with a larger agenda-driven narrative, you know. And we are right where we're supposed to be along that timeline, that narrational, agenda-driven timeline. Where we are right now is exactly where we're supposed to be. I have no idea, but I'm going to go this way because you can't carry on that way. So let's have a look. You'll see where I'm trying to get to in a second, hopefully. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to be talking about. You know, everything happens in the 1800s. Even the introduction of, and I think I've mentioned this before, even the introduction of what's called the Haversine formula, that came about in the 1800s. And the Haversine formula is key for turning flat earth elevation angle measurements into numbers that will then eventually produce, you know, a globe or curvature inclusive representation of our earth. Let's put it like that. I'm trying to find the right word because we don't have models. That's the wrong word to use. Here we go. So this is where I want it to come out. Now, this is the first time I've been here. I've never, ever, ever been here in the nearly 10 years I've lived here. I'm just going to let the pictures talk for them and catch my breath. And this leaves me breathless anyway. For me, it's just mind-blowing. It is absolutely awe-inspiring, mind-blowing, takes my breath away totally, honestly. I cannot explain what a feeling it is to suddenly turn up at a construction like this. It is absolutely unbelievable, incredible, purely made of bricks. Let that sink in. Right, now just for a bit of background, and I'm not going to waffle too much. Like I said, I don't want to make too much of this video because we are going to be coming to the viaducts that are supposed to be earmarked for demolition by 2035. A good friend told me, and I went and checked it out, and yes, as was disclosed to me, in actual fact, that they are the plans of our wonderful council, that they want to rob us of these fabulous, unexplainable, just gorgeous buildings and constructions. God, can you imagine living here? Blimey. I can hardly sleep now, but I definitely wouldn't get any sleep living here. I'd be looking out my window every day. But yeah, so these are earmarked for demolition by 2035 at a price, at a cost of £2 million, I do believe. And I think there are some initiatives up and running from local residents and such, like petitions and all that sort of stuff. I hope there are, and if there aren't, then please join me in a way that we can maybe get a petition up and running. I know there is a way of doing it. I've forgotten it now because I haven't done one for ages. And to be honest with you, since I've realised the scallywags that we're dealing with on ministerial level, I've kind of lost interest in looking at that at all as an option, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, you got to try everything that's there at our disposal, right? But yeah, I mean, what a travesty it would be to demolish these. I mean, not only are they amazing arches and all the rest of it, but they curve. They're not even straight, right? They're not, you know, that isn't going in a straight line over there like that. They've got a curve in them. It bends round, right? Just to add to the challenges, you know, bricks that weren't manufactured on a large scale until 1885. And I've said this before, yes, you would have had your local, I don't know, brick makers, if you like, but you've got what you know, you've got brickyards, but you've got other things to contest with, like logistics, for example, transportation, storage, all these many things that are all part of the building process of any construction. You know, I've said this on a video, I think, recently, that I've been watching. If I haven't, or if I have, I do apologise, but it just fits nicely right now. I've been following the construction of Everton Football Club's brand new stadium on the banks of the River Mersey up in Liverpool. And all the processes involved. The actual building of the actual building it seems to be the simplest part of the whole thing, right? You know, it's the producing of the materials, the transportation, the storage, the organisation, administration, the leadership of certain departments by qualified people, blah de blah de blah. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. By the way, not once did they use the waterway as a means to transport anything to help that construction. They used roads only, and they came in with low loaders and flatbeds, trucks and all that sort of stuff. They did not use the river once for anything. And yet the stadium is right on the river. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I heard often being